Mr. President, I rise today to deliver a very difficult speech. This will be my farewell speech to the United States Senate. Serving as Nevada's 24th United States Senator has truly been the greatest professional privilege of my life. Growing up with a single mom in very humble surroundings, I simply never imagined that one day I would end up as a member of such an august body as this. Unfortunately, the amazing experiences that stem from the more than 10 years of my Senate service cannot be summed up in one single speech. I owe a humble thank you to many people who helped to get me here and who have served me effectively. From campaign volunteers, staff, and donors to some of the best people who I have ever worked with, my Senate staff, I cannot thank you enough for the honor of the past many years. Each of you has helped me to achieve more than my individual talents alone could have ever accomplished. When I look back over my time, both here and in the United States House of Representatives, I'm very proud of the many accomplishments that we together have been able to achieve. I would like to take just a moment to mention just a few. The beauty of the state of Nevada has been greatly enhanced and protected for the enjoyment of future generations because of my work in authoring the Southern Nevada Public Lands Management Act and several other important lands bills. Because of these lands bills, Nevada has been able to keep over $3 billion that has been raised from land sales in Southern Nevada. This money that did not have to come out of the United States Treasury. In the past, BLM land, that's the public land in Nevada, was exchanged for sensitive land around the state. But as a result of the lands bills that we worked on, we were able to instead auction this BLM land, raising far more money than the state of Nevada, for the state of Nevada, than the land exchanges ever were able to do. This land revenue has been used to purchase sensitive land, to protect it for future generations, but also to construct over 100 beautiful parks and trails in Southern Nevada. I cannot tell you how proud I am when I drive around Las Vegas and see so many families enjoying these beautiful areas. These lands bills have made the great quality of life that we enjoy in Nevada that much better. Additionally, for Northern Nevada, my love for Lake Tahoe has been evident throughout the years. I have worked hard to ensure that the beauty of those tranquil waters and surroundings are just as beautiful decades from now as they are today, and our lands bills help to achieve this goal. Through this legislation, hundreds of millions of dollars have been devoted to preserve its ecosystem and important fuel reduction projects around our state to help prevent catastrophic wildfires that so threaten the future of our state and its breathtaking landscape. Additionally, I have been a passionate advocate for education reform. Our lands bills have directed millions and millions of dollars to Nevada schools as an endowment that our state will reap the benefits from for many years yet to come. I want to thank Senators Reed and Bryan for their cooperation in helping draft these great pieces of legislation that our state benefits from so greatly. I also want to thank the folks on my staff, especially John Lopez, who worked so hard to turn these pieces of legislation into law. Speaking of legislation that became law, I would also like to highlight another accomplishment of which I'm so proud. As the only bipartisan provision in the so-called Obamacare bill, Senator Tom Carper and I worked against some powerful interest groups to get the Healthy Behaviors Act added to the health reform bill. Our provision was modeled after efforts by Safeway in the private sector to both improve healthcare quality and to reduce the costs of healthcare. Essentially, our provision rewards people in the form of lower healthcare premiums for making healthy choices, such as quitting smoking. If we as Americans continue to eat too much, exercise too little, and to smoke, it really doesn't matter what kind of health care reform we enact in this country, costs will continue to escalate. I hope that this provision will highlight the individual contribution that we can all make to reduce our health care costs. And certainly this legislation would not have become law if it were not for the spectacular job that Michelle Spence from my office did. As I mentioned earlier, I simply cannot list the number of things or the number of people on my staff who have helped me with legislation. We've accomplished a lot. I wish I could do it in just one speech, but it's not possible. I could speak at length about my fight for lower taxes and individual freedoms, protection of constitutional rights, the dignity of our servicemen and women, education reform, and so much more, but there is not enough time. And I hope that my voting record and legislative record here in the United States Senate will continue to speak for me long after I have left this chamber. I would like to speak, though, about a few observations that I have made through the course of my time here. When I first ran for office back in 1994, I was rather naive. I was also very idealistic. I simply wanted to make a difference in this great country. Throughout the years, I may have lost my naivete, but I never lost my idealism. I still strongly believe that the United States is the greatest country in the history of the world, and it is worth fighting for and worth protecting. I will leave this place knowing that there are some really outstanding people here who are just as idealistic, or maybe more so, than I ever was. And they're willing to take the tough political votes that are necessary to save this country from total bankruptcy. My prayer is that more people will join them in that courage. Our children and our grandchildren deserve to have the same country that we enjoyed, and it is up to the House, the Senate, and the White House to stand together with the American people to save the future of the United States from self-destruction. When I first arrived in the Senate, I observed several people who were so caught up in their own self-importance and busyness that arrogance literally dripped from them. Unfortunately, they were blind to it, and everyone could see it but them. When one takes a position of leadership, this is a very real danger of getting caught up in the hype surrounding that status. Oftentimes, the more power and prestige a person achieves, the more arrogant a person can become. As easy it was for me to view this in other people, unfortunately, I was blind to how arrogant and self-centered that I had become. I did not recognize that I thought mostly of myself. The worst part about this is I even tried not to become caught up in my own self-importance. Unfortunately, the urge to believe in it was stronger than the power to fight it. This is how dangerous the feeling of power and adulation can be. My caution to all of my colleagues is to surround yourself with people who will be honest with you about how you really are and what you are becoming, and then make them promise to not hold back no matter how much you may try to prevent them from telling you the truth. I wish that I had done this sooner, but this is one of the hardest lessons that I've had to learn. I believe that if I had learned this lesson earlier, I would have prevented myself from judging two of my colleagues when I had no place to do so. When I was chairman of the National Republican Senate Committee, I was confronted with the personal issues facing Senator Larry Craig and Senator Ted Stevens. Following Larry's admission and Ted's guilty verdict, I too believed in the power of my leadership position, and I called on both of them to resign. I sincerely struggled with these decisions afterward. So much so that I went to each of them a few weeks afterward and admitted what I did was wrong, and I asked both of them for forgiveness. Each of these men were gracious enough to forgive me, even though publicly I did not show them the same grace. I'm very grateful to both of these men. When I announced my personal failure 2 years ago, Larry Craig was one of the first to call and to express his support. I truly cannot tell you what that meant then and what it means to me today. The purpose of me speaking about this is to humbly show that in life a person understands mercy a lot more when they need it and when it is shown to them. Again, this is a hard lesson that I have had to learn, but I hope that I can now show mercy to people who come into my life who truly need it. As I conclude, I have a few others that I want to thank. My colleague from the state of Nevada, Senator Reed. I ran against Senator Reed in 1998. He beat me by just a little over 400 votes. Afterward, 2 years later, when I was fortunate enough to win the election, Senator Reed and I sat down and we kind of made a pact between us that we were going to get along even though we are of different parties. We were going to put the past behind us and we were going to work together for the people of the state of Nevada. Funny thing happened along the way over these last 10+ years. Senator Reed and I developed a friendship. Two people with opposite voting records, opposite views on major national issues, but we worked together on a lot of issues that affected our state. Friendships formed between our staffs, and a true friendship formed between Senator Reed and myself, and for that, I want to thank him. To my Senate colleagues, I would like to take a moment to apologize for what you have had to go through as a result of my actions. I know that many of you were put in difficult situations because of me, and for that, I sincerely apologize. To my wife, Darlene, who has been through so much with me and has fought through so many struggles, is owed more than I could ever repay. I do not deserve a woman like her, but I love her, and I'm so grateful that the Lord has put her in my life. Our children, Trevor, Sienna, Michael, have never known anything than their dad leaving each week to come back to Washington, D.C. for my work. All three of them are incredible, and it has been a blessing and a privilege just to be their dad. I have also been very blessed with a great set of parents who have stood by me through thick and thin, and also the rest of my extended family. I also have wonderful friends who have been there with me and my family through the highs and the lows. And lastly, most importantly, I want to thank God for allowing me to be here. I have been encouraged by some not to mention God because it looks hypocritical because of my own personal failings. But I would argue that I have not mentioned him enough. I am glad that the Lord not only forgives, but he actually likes it when we give him thanks. So Lord, thank you for all that you've done in my life. I hope that I can do better in the future. I hope that I can learn to love you with all of my heart, soul, and strength, and to love others as myself. My colleagues, I bid you farewell. Know that you will all be in my prayers. I yield the floor.